I'm an addict by the name of Al from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is just north of Philadelphia. My clean date is September 25th, 1979. And which means that when I got here, at least on the East Coast anyway, maybe not as much in Southern California, but here on the East Coast, there wasn't much NA to come to. And so, by default, we went to the other place, a fair amount and at the very beginning, but never really quite felt that comfortable there. And so there was only one thing to do, and that was, simply to start more NA meetings. Eventually in Bucks County, we had 7 meetings a week, and it was like one large home group. It was same people at the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday meeting, um, and we knew absolutely nothing about the 12 steps, except we read them out of the little white book. We knew even less about the traditions. The traditions were principles for us to beat each other over the head to make sure that you were doing things our way. And but what we did know about is we knew about fellowship. We hung tight together. Pete's shaking his head because he was here in that time, and he was part of that Bucks County crew. We knew about fellowship. We knew that if we hung together, that we were going to get another day. We were going to stay clean, and so we hung together. We did, I'm talking about everything together, everything. Up to and including, hopping the fence at the country club at 1 o'clock in the morning. When the country club was closed, and swimming in their pool, and then having nude NA meetings afterwards. So, like I said, little by little, we started more and more NA meetings, and we didn't really know too much about other NA fellowships that were out there. Back in those days, it was like, pick up your telephone and call somebody. I remember how excited I was when I got an answering machine, and I was even more excited when I got a pager. So we ended up at the first East Coast convention, and we started meeting other people from other places. People from Williamsport, Pittsburgh. Bo had come up from Atlanta. Greg Pierce, who's no longer with us, he came from Wolf Creek, Oregon, and we started learning that there was other NA communities out there. We would send out to what was the World Service Office. It might have still been in Jimmy's trunk at that point, and for literature. And we were lucky if we got literature back 3 or 4 months later. I think he was a busy dude back in those days, trying to keep the literature orders going out of the trunk of his car. But yeah. So I say sometimes that I was very incredibly fortunate because I had, what I would consider to be a second row seat to the development of Narcotics Anonymous. There was other people that were here before me that had that front row seat, like my good friend George. It started the very first meeting I walked into on a Tuesday night in friendly Mill Street in Bristol, Pennsylvania. It was the first meeting I ever walked into, and he had started that meeting. And there was only a few addicts in that meeting, and they took me under their wing, and because I was pretty well, for most intents and purposes, non-functional. A week previous, I'm driving down Route 95, and I'm driving down Route 95 doing 95 miles an hour, sizing up bridge abutments, and thinking like, all I gotta do is turn my wheel a quarter turn into that bridge abutment. I could just end it all and be done, because that's where addiction had taken me. So I was pretty well non-functional, but they took me under the wing, and they drugged me around with them, and they took me everywhere, and eventually, I started taking other people under my wing and dragging them around, taking them everywhere too. And that's, kind of how the fellowship grew. By default, we ended up at the second East Coast convention, and Greg Pierce was the speaker there Sunday morning. It was a rainy Sunday. It was coming down in droves. It was coming down in cats and dogs. And he said something that still sticks with me today. And that was 40 years ago. He said, you don't have to work the steps. And then he paused. And then he said, if you can stand it. And it was almost like, even though there was probably maybe 100 people, 120 people in the room, something like that. It was almost like we were sitting across the table having coffee, and he was talking directly to me, because it's like, I'm a year and a half clean at this point, and I'm not working the steps, and I can't stand it. I'm going to 5-6 meetings a week, and the 5-6 meetings a week we're running out. I needed more, and what I needed is really need to get bit, work the steps. So I go home. I get in the shower, and I repack my bag, and I convinced Pete here, who's in the meeting tonight. I twist his arm a little bit, because I lost my license for the first 5 years and didn't have a car, but he had one. So I kind of twisted his arm a little bit, and I said, Pete, let's go out to this thing, and out in Ohio. And so I'm on my knees in the shower. I repack my bag. We get in Pete's car, and we drive to Warren, Ohio, 7 hours. And we ended up in the Fifth World Literature Conference of NA, working on the basic text. And most people don't know that your basic text was written or worked on by people that had probably an average clean time of about 3 or 4 years. Like the World Literature chairperson at the time was Bo. He had maybe 7 years. There were people in those workshops that had like 3 days, if that. And they were welcome. They were welcome in those workshops, and we wanted their input, and their input was valued, and it was valuable. And and then we kind of saw that process through to its conclusion, and the basic text was approved at the World Service Conference in 1982, and it's been our approved literature since. We've had a number of different versions and a number of different controversies around it, still do, but it's been our approved literature in one way, shape, form, or another since April of 1982. And what happened in the fellowship at that point is it's kind of exploded. The World Convention was held in New York in 1983, September 1983. Jimmy came out. It's the only time I ever met Jimmy. And it was at the base of the World Trade Center. It was in the Marriott Hotel at the base of the World Trade Center, which is no longer there for obvious reasons. Yeah. And Pete and I remember when there was no ongoing, consistent Narcotics Anonymous in New York City. It was just New York was just getting off the ground at that time. And they had the World Convention, and I was with them in Wisconsin the year before at the World Convention when they won the bid, and came back with them in their van, Rosie and Tony and Terry and John Curley, as I recall, and they were all excited that they had won the bid for the World Convention. But then the next thought was like, oh shit, what the fuck do we do now? The whole world's coming to New York. Like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pull this off? But they did, and the New York Fellowship exploded after that. It just kind of took off. It was an impetus that really kind of launched them into a new realm of existence. There was a bunch of us in Cuba last year for the first, Cuban NA convention. And there's at that time anyway, there's 100 addicts in Havana, that were members in Havana, and there's 400 of us that showed up. Just imagine what that did to the Cuban Fellowship. Again, it just kind of launched them into another realm of existence. I was looking at what was going on, and I'm thinking to myself while we're there, their fellowship's just never going to be the same after this weekend. It's going to be changed, probably forever, hopefully forever. And so that's how Narcotics Anonymous grew, and I've had the great fortune, luxury, whatever, privilege, probably privilege is the best word, to travel a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. I've been to 15 countries. And one of the things that I see is that there's still fellowships out there that are still in that very young stage of their growth. One that stands out for me is Iceland. We were in Iceland, and there was 7 meetings a week in Iceland. They were all in Reykjavik. They were all in the same building. There was one meeting every night in the same building. And they were sharing that building with about 7 or 8 other fellowships. AA, GA, fucking A, I don't know, a bunch of A's. They were sharing it with a whole bunch of other fellowships. And even though NA had been in Iceland for 35 years, their fellowship had only grown to the point where they had those 7 meetings in Reykjavik. They had just gotten the basic text in Icelandic about a year and a half before that. And then if you were to drive around Iceland, you'd have to drive 800 miles, which is kind of like New York to Jacksonville, or maybe Sacramento to San Diego, or, maybe even further. I don't know, but 800 miles. And there's people out there, there's addicts out there, but there's no NA out there, And of course, what's happened to us in this past year, when we're focused and we're intent as addicts, we're pretty good at taking lemons and turning them into lemonade, and that's exactly what we've done in this past year, on this platform, this virtual platform. And, it's actually pretty amazing. In this past year, I've been to meetings pretty well all over the world: Philippines, Thailand, Iran, Dubai, UK, pretty much everywhere. And, this is an opportunity that we've had to carry the message that it was available to us, but we weren't really, when I said getting focused, we weren't focused on how to actually optimize it and use it. But COVID hit, and we learned real quick how to optimize it. It was amazing to watch, because the whole entire fellowship switched over from face-to-face meetings to virtual meetings in about a week. How do you can't even make that shit up. 70,000 meetings a week, and in 140 countries, and then we kind of put the whole entire fellowship over, in the course of a week. It was quite amazing. But Anna, who's here tonight, and we were in Thailand. We were in Thailand together, and I think we had a more accurate view of what was going on with COVID than a lot of people, because we were over in Thailand, which shares a border with China. And so I think we had a little bit more accurate view, because I was coming back here, and I'm in my home group the next week, and I'm giving people elbow bumps, and they're looking at me like, "What's wrong with you, dude? What, I can't have a hug?" And I'm like, "No," And a week later, that meeting was gone. It wasn't there anymore. My home group was in a Jewish synagogue. They basically closed it off to everybody, not just us, but everybody. But we kind of switched over to this platform, and she had ended up in. She was kind of searching, finding out, like, well, what do we do now? There's no meetings anymore. Like, all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, there's no meetings. So she ended up, by grace, she ended up in Quarantine NA Seattle, and there was a young lady up there by the name of Jin Ah, and who had started Quarantine NA Seattle, and Anna ended up in their second meeting ever, and pretty much just asked them, can we borrow your concept, your idea? And she said, yeah, go for it. So Anna started up, and her roommate started up Quarantine NA San Diego, and they've been running 32 meetings a week for the past year. There's 120 trusted servants. Now imagine that, 120 trusted servants in that group that are keeping that whole ship floating and running pretty well, I would add. And 90% of the trusted servants in that group have less than a year clean. There's no clean time requirement to be a trusted servant. You guys over there in West Coast, you call it secretary, and we over here in the East Coast, we call it chairing. There's people chairing, secretary meetings with 30 days clean, and it's quite amazing. And they just had their first anniversary, and Anna says to me, she says, "What do you think about we'll have a speaker jam on the anniversary, and what do you think about we get all people that have gotten clean on this virtual platform to be the speakers, instead of having old heads, Pete and me and other people, like people have been dinosaurs that have been here, since the pterodactyls were running around. But and I told her, I said, great, that sounds like a great, go for it. It might blow up, and it might blow up in your face, but like, go for it, give it a whirl. And it was a home run. It was a total home run. The speakers were all really great, and it was great because they had a great message for that half generation that's right behind them. People that are 10 days, 8 days, 22 days. And I'm usually in that group Wednesday and Saturday nights. I've been speaker coordinating for that group for quite a few months now, and I'm usually in that group Wednesday and Saturday nights. And we ask, is there anybody in the group with less than 30 days? And I mean, some nights there's 7, 8, 9 people. 2 days, 8 days, 10 days. 1 day, 22 days. And they're getting clean, they're staying clean. There's a number of people in that group now that got 6 months, 8 months, a year. There's one young lady in that group, Erica's celebrating a year, coming up shortly. And it's quite amazing. It's I say that when like Pete and I got here, it was like a new era of Narcotics Anonymous, if you will. And with the advent of COVID, has been even yet another era, a new era of Narcotics Anonymous. And people will be talking about this time in history workshops 20, 30. I mean, we talk now about stuff that happened 40 years ago, in history workshops. They'll be talking about this time period 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be here 50 years from now. I don't think I'll be here to hear them, but they'll be talking about this time period in history workshops, decades in the future, because it's a seminal moment in our development. And it's truly evident that we are, in fact, a worldwide fellowship. I was speaker coordinating for Iran and Dubai for a little while, and those meetings are translated from English into Farsi. And we've combined languages and come together with all different languages and stuff like that. And in our Wednesday night home group, we have American Sign Language interpreter for people that come in that are deaf, that may not be able to really truly participate in this platform, other than the fact that we have an ASL interpreter. Because I mean, they otherwise they could come in, and they'd just be looking at a bunch of silent screen, looking at all our faces, and they wouldn't be hearing anything. But now, they're getting ASL interpretation, and it just pretty well blows me away almost every Wednesday when I watch it go down. It's pretty amazing. When we see that happen, and so it's yeah, it's been like I said, quite a seminal moment. So the topic is living your dreams, or living your best life, and it's kind of funny. Anna and I were talking about this today. Like, coming into COVID, man, I felt like I was just like killing it, and we were saying it all the time. We're killing it in life, and we really, truly felt like we're just killing it in life. And I think COVID put a little bit of a damper on that, because like we're just traveling, and like you said, living our best life. The life, even still, I've got nothing to complain. I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. I got really nothing to complain about. Any problems that I even perceive that I have are all high class problems. They're not, they're all high class problems. Um, but the life that I lead today on a daily basis, is a life that I wasn't even able to even begin. And I do mean I wasn't able to begin. And I do mean I was not even able to begin to imagine, when I first got here. I was just trying to like not drive my car into a bridge abutment. You know, I was trying to walk into a convenience store at 3 o'clock in the morning, and not be paranoid that the dude's behind the thing there where they put the sodas in watching me. I'm checking out my every move. I was just happy to know that the cops weren't behind the dumpster at 4 o'clock in the morning, having the place under surveillance when there was nobody there. you know, so so you know, uh, traveling to Iceland and Thailand and France and Switzerland, and, it's all a bonus. It's all a bonus. Like I said, we're looking at the possibility of Ukraine, coming up in July, and we're thinking that it's going to happen. It's the European Convention, and I've gone to the European Convention 3 or 4 times now, and it's really great because what happens is that people kind of converge on the European Convention, and then we have this big international party all weekend, and I think the last one, there was people from like 50 or 60 countries or something, like some crazy number. And the Thailand convention is like that too, but 50 or 60 countries. And then what happens is that, the weekend ends, and then people just disperse and go all over Europe and visit all these different countries, all over Europe. Like one group will go to Sweden, one group goes to Finland, one group goes to France, another one goes to the UK, Scotland. And it's quite an amazing convention for those reasons. So we're really hoping that that's going to happen, and we're looking forward to that. And speaking of the European Convention, we went to the European Convention in Faro, Portugal, which is on the Algarve, which is the southern coast of Portugal, which is just amazingly beautiful. And so we knew we were going there, and so I just pulled up my map. I pulled up Google Maps and Google Earth. I like Google Earth too. And I just started looking around like, okay, where are we going from Portugal? And I said to myself, like, well, hell, how about Morocco? So I put it, we have this group of about 10, 12, 15 of us that, we travel together a lot. sometimes there's some people and not others, and but I put it out to the group. I said, "Hey, gang, what do you think about Morocco?" And everybody, like one by one, like that night, said, "Yeah, yeah, let's do it. Let's go to Morocco." So we started figuring, okay, how does this work? How do we get to Morocco? So we figured out that we can we can get on the ferry, and we can take the ferry over to Tangiers, Morocco, and then from there we can drive and rent a car. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts of that story I don't have time to get into. We'll rent this car and drive to Marrakesh. Well, Leah looks up and she finds out that there's like a Tuesday night meeting in Marrakesh. It's like now there's 3 meetings in Morocco, 31 million people, 3 meetings. One is in Marrakesh on Tuesday night. We drive 6 hours. We get over to the ferry. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. We drive like 6 hours like maniacs to get to this meeting. And Leah brings this whole box of literature for them, half in Arabic and half in French, because they speak 2 different languages there, right? So she brings this whole box of literature, and we get a driver who luckily speaks English, and he can translate for us. Takes us to it's a Catholic church in the middle of a Muslim country. Like, you can't make that up either, right? Catholic church in the middle of a Muslim country, and we get there and there's like nobody there. So we finally get a hold of the pastor, and our driver is able to translate back and forth. Through the pastor, we find the one member who was a member there, and we find out that there's 3 members of the group. One was sick, one was out of town. So the third guy decided, well, there's going to be nobody there anyway, so I'm not going. Now there's 10 of us that show up at this Tuesday night meeting with this box of literature. And so, long story short, we gave the box of literature to the pastor to give to. We think we busted their anonymity, however, it was innocent on our part, because we came to find out that we don't think the pastor knew that it was a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I think he thought it was an AA meeting. So we think we might have busted their anonymity or whatever with the church, but we left the box of literature, with the pastor, and yeah, so it's a pretty interesting story. But again, it's just another, 3 meetings in a Muslim country with 31 million people. There's one in Marrakesh, one in Fez, and one in Casablanca, and that's it. That's all they had at the time. Hopefully they have more now. But anyway, there's dozens of stories like that. But some of my close friends, they ask me sometimes, like, dude, what are you, like, a trust fund baby or what? Like, you're traveling all the time, and et cetera, et cetera. Are you a trust fund baby? And it's like, and the answer to that is absolutely not. The answer to that is, well, there's 2 answers to that. One is that I got here and I got a work ethic. I learned how to get up and go to work every day. Eventually I started my own company, and it did fairly well, with my company. And the second answer to that is my friend CJ, who's my travel sponsor, who taught me how to travel pretty well, more or less free. And just this week I was looking at my points, and I realized I'm just getting ready to go over the 1 million point mark. So I'll have 1 million points, which pretty well gives you a pretty good license to go, pretty much wherever you want. so and he's traveled to 100 countries, all in and around NA, and so he's kind of tutored me, and still tutors me regularly on how to make that happen. And it's the beauty in it is that we get to see these other growing, burgeoning fellowships, like, all over the world. And the thing that I'm always struck with, and it just really just slaps me right upside the head every time I see it, is that how incredibly fortunate we are here in the US, because I mean, pre-COVID, I could make within a half hour of my house, I got a choice of about three different meetings on all 7 nights of the week. If I want to go an hour, I probably got a choice of about 7 or 8 meetings, on any given night of the week. Um, we used to go on road trips too. We drive a couple hours, and go on a road trip about once a month. We would just get in the car and go somewhere, and check out a new meeting that we've never been to, or somebody invite us to come, or something like that. It's pretty amazing. But now, I can leave this meeting here tonight, and I can go pick a meeting in, like, Russia or Iran or Thailand, or whatever the case may be. you know um Thailand's about 12 hours out, so when it's midnight here, it's noon in Thailand. So I might catch an afternoon meeting. And um it's just opened up so much of the world to us that it's quite amazing. And it just makes me feel really rich, makes me feel really wealthy. And I'm not talking about dollars and cents. I'm talking about in spirit. It just makes me feel really rich and really wealthy in spirit. And to see our fellowship grow, the way it has. And one of the things that when Pete and I, were first here, um, he's got just about almost as much clean time as I do. So we kind of came right in that same time frame. One of the things that we were really, really, really fortunate about is that we ended up surrounded by people that they weren't satisfied with Narcotics Anonymous as it was. They wanted Narcotics Anonymous to be what they envisioned that it could be. And they were really, truly, incredibly hell bent on seeing to it that that was going to come to fruition. And and we kind of, in being around them, and I'm talking about Bo and Greg and Dutch, who was my most recent sponsor, who passed away in August. Greg passed away a number of years ago, and Bob Barrett and others. We were able to capture their spirit, and kind of, make it our own. And, we kind of like took on that same thing. And, but the thing is that I don't think that, even as much as that vision was for them, I don't think that they were able to envision what we have today. Even pre-COVID, like I get, when I sit back and think about it for a minute, I get blown away. Just this whole platform, because when we got here, personal computers, people didn't even have personal computers yet. A lot of the basic text was done on IBM Selectric typewriters, and luckily Pete typed 60 words a minute. I typed 60 words a day, at that time. Maybe I can type 60 words, in 10 minutes now. But he could type. There were no personal computers, no cell phones. If you wanted to make a phone call, you had to put a quarter in a payphone and make a phone call. So what we're doing now would have been science fiction. If you told us that we'd be doing this now, we would have told you, no, it's not happening. You're out of your mind, because this would have been like science fiction, at that time. We kind of heard about, personal computers, like, I think some people that were really, really wealthy were starting to get them at the time, but, I couldn't afford one. I didn't even know what it would do, to be honest with you. But so to be sitting here on my iPad, in a meeting in California, it's just amazing. And so that being said, I think that I think it's almost time for a resurgence of that concept. of, not being satisfied with Narcotics Anonymous as it is, but, working to make Narcotics Anonymous what we envision that it can be, to redevelop that vision. Because the bottom line is that, there's still people that are dying of our disease. Just this past week, there was a funeral for a beautiful young lady who was maybe 28 years old, of a friend of mine, and she passed away. She OD'd, and I know that on Facebook, probably no week goes by where you don't see a post on Facebook from somebody. My mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my son, my daughter, my cousin, my niece, my nephew, my neighbor, somebody dying from the disease of addiction. So our work is not done. We can probably almost bet that our work will never be done. So I almost think it's time for a resurgence of that concept of like not being satisfied with where things are, but being kind of hell bent on seeing to it that no addict need die seeking addiction. And this virtual platform, I think, has been really really good. I think we're getting more newcomers coming in now, that they're coming in and staying clean, than we were when we were face to face. Maybe that's just my perception, but it's certainly arguable. But I think we're getting more people coming in now and staying clean than we were before, when we were in face to face. So I'll leave you with that one. I'm an addict by the name of Al.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Very much.
Aloha, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Love your stories.
It was awesome. Thank you.